everyone. My name is Jenna Ryan, and I'm here again today to give you more information about what's going on and how people were targeted who were no matter what. So they were called and labeled names by our government, whether or not they were what they were called. So I can't really say this word because I don't want the video to be taken down. But if you can read it here, I'm going to call it DVE. DVE is the acronym for these very harsh statements. And they're calling people DVE who are not DVE. And they're not even getting their chance in court to prove it. They're not being formally charged, but they are being called that. My goal in this podcast today, this is going to be a shorter podcast, and I'm not going to provide all the info. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what this particular document is discussing. I found this on Google simply by typing in DVE. I don't even know that. I think it filled in for me. So this is, how do I get this over here so you can see it? This is a dni.gov. So you can also do your own homework if you'd like. But anyway, so I'm going to come here. We're going to talk about the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. This was March 2021. So when all of these things happened to me, it was January 2021. So this is just right after all the things that happened to me happened. And it's very important for me to gather information that helps me to understand the mindset of our leadership in 2021 and during that time, to really understand what it was that happened to me and how I was labeled in such a fashion. So like I said, this is not everything. There's so much proof. This is evidence that I'm using myself to show you and the court system what happened. So I'm just going to start with the big stuff first. How about that? So this is the last page of that document, page 4. If you'll notice, it says unclassified, where it says domestic DVEs are U.S.-based actors who conduct or threaten activities that are dangerous to human life in violation of criminal laws of the United States or any state, appearing to be intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. Now, some of the problems I have with this is I know who is considered a DVE, and that is people that are dissent. They disagree with the government, and I'm going to show you that in a minute, and I have lots of proof of that, but it takes time. So what bothers me is that to the people in the power at that time, threatening to them meant free speech. That's why at the time, they were so intently focused on censorship. That's why the FBI and, DHS or whomever, CISA, whatever, were involved in the Facebook censorship and taking down posts, and people were thrown in Facebook jail. And that's why you had the Twitter files, what Elon Musk has revealed in the Twitter files. That's why the FBI had such control over social media and, of course, the media, is because what threatened them was free speech. Okay? That was dangerous to them in their view. So when you see these words, they seem so acerbic and they seem so threatening and they seem so scary. But you have to understand these terms are being twisted and used on ordinary citizens who are exercising their constitutional right to free speech. This is unprecedented in American history. And it's very important that we document, that we examine, and that we understand what happened to us so that we can begin to take steps to activate and become activists and really say what's going on and really speak our truth and really reform this process. So domestic VE are US based actors who conduct or threaten activities that are dangerous to human life, in violation of criminal laws of the United States or any state, appearing to be intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. So, appearing to be, I have a problem with that because who is the judge? Who's the jury? Do you have to have you just appear? So someone can just appear to be some way and that automatically makes them a DVE? Appearing to be. Not only are they appearing to be, but they're intended. That's an intent. That's not even direct. You could say anybody's appearing to be intended to do anything. You don't know what's in someone else's mind. This is unlawful. This is unlawful, and it's coming from Director of National Intelligence of the United States in March of 2021, and that's a problem. Appearing to be intended to intimidate or coerce. Intimidate. What does that mean? Well, these people who are writing this document have different meanings for words. And what they consider intimidate and what we consider intimidate may be two different things. And each of us are in America, we're all citizens. We have rights, and we have the right to think our own thoughts and not have other people put their own overlays over what we're thinking. Intimidate or coerce. So that means that general persuasion skills, coerce, is a DVE. Okay. Coerce a civilian population and influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion, which means dissent. It means political dissent is a DVE. That is what this is saying. They're throwing in some other information to make it look much worse than it is so that people don't know so that people will go along with it. If they don't question it, they're just going to go along with it. However, this is saying that DVEs are people who protest. We have the First Amendment right to protest. We have the right to coerce the civilian population. That's one of our rights under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which is what the people that are holding office and writing this content have sworn an oath to the U.S. Constitution. And here they are violating their oath to the U.S. Constitution. And influence the policy of a government. So even that is in there, like we're supposed to influence the policy of a government. We vote these people into office. The politicians are in office because we put them there, not because they're supposed to rule over us. We have elected them into office. And according to these people, me talking to you right now and sharing this information about their information is DVE. And to use the term V is that's gaslighting. That's gaslighting, and it's turning regular exercise of constitutional rights into a crime. Criminalizing the First Amendment, criminalizing it. Horrible. And also labeling, someone who is actually exercising their rights as someone who's extreme. That's absolutely gaslighting. Or affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction. Well, nobody's asking to destruct anything. but they're putting this word in there so that it manipulates the mind into thinking, oh, that's what they're doing. But that may not be what the person is doing. Someone who is exercising their free speech and their civil rights is not doing these things. Or this other word here, which is awful, and then this other word. So they throw in 3 words here. This one I can't say, this one I can't say, and this one I can't say. As if the whole thing fits. This is propaganda. This is mind manipulation. This is putting people in a trance and causing people to believe one thing by throwing in words that have nothing to do with the other things that they said. If these people were really after these items, then that would be okay. I mean, of course we don't want these things, these 3 items to occur. But that's not who they're talking about. But they're putting average people in with this category in order to demonize, vilify, and cancel them. As per the definition of DVE, 18 USC Code 2331. I need to look that up. Mere advocacy of political or social positions. Okay, now watch. They're going to backtrack. Okay? They're going to backtrack, but then they're going to come back. So then it cancels out everything they're going to say. But here we go. Mere advocacy of political or social positions, political activism, use of strong rhetoric, or generalized philosophic embrace of V tactics. And they're calling it that. That just bothers the crap out of me. That they would call advocacy of a political or social position V. Or that they would call political activism V in the same sentence. Or they would call using strong rhetoric, exercising your First Amendment rights, V. That's so abhorrent. Or generalized philosophic embrace of V tactics may not constitute VE and may be constitutionally protected. Wow. They decided to throw the word constitutional in here. May be constitutionally protected. Yeah, it is. While the majority of DVEs fall into one threat category, some draw upon or are inspired by ideological themes found in other threat categories. So the threat that these people are talking about is not the threat to citizens, is not the threat to others. It's the threat to the power structure that wants to control. Okay? So the threat is not V. The threat is their ideas and their power. So if you're a threat to their power by exercising your own rights, then they're calling you a DVE. And they are putting you in a category. The problem with this is that this category is being utilized to create regulations in the financial institutions and in all institutions of America. So this is a big deal that this is not just nothing. This is a huge deal that they are saying people that are a threat to their power are V. You can't do that. It's not right to do to people. It is such a violation of our human rights, of our civil rights. So, embrace of violent tactics may not constitute VE and may be constitutionally protected, while the majority of DVEs, so they're just calling these people, like myself, a DVE. That's what they're calling people. Like they're literally putting a label and they're discriminating against people for their political views and for exercising their rights fall into one threat category. So sick. Some draw upon or are inspired by ideological themes found in other threat categories. So now, racially or ethnically motivated VEs. DVEs with ideological agendas derived from bias, often related to race and ethnicity, held by the actor against others, including a given population group. DVE, so anybody who's an this is just absolutely weird. Okay. Animal rights, environmental VEs. Just because you want animals to have rights, suddenly they're going to label you. DVEs seeking to end or mitigate perceived cruelty, harm, or exploitation of animals, or perceived exploitation of or destruction of natural resources in the environment. So that means if you're a climate person, you could be considered a DVE. I mean, they are literally coming in. I don't know if they're throwing this in order to seem non-biased against one particular political viewpoint, or if they're serious, because I've never seen them take any negative actions. When I say them, I mean the regime in 2021. I've never seen them take negative actions against animal rights environmentalists. Okay. So I'm wondering if they just didn't throw that in to make them not look as prejudiced as they are. Okay, this one's weird. Abortion-related VEs. DVEs with ideological agendas in support of pro-life or pro-choice. So I think that they really just meant to say pro-life because they did not take any action against anyone who was pro-choice. Their actions are only against pro-lifers, putting pro-lifers in jail for praying and protesting, but not pro-choice people. So it's selective enforcement. I think that they just have those two there to balance this out and make it not look prejudice. This one really bothers me. Anti-government, anti-authority VEs. So that means if you're not happy with the government, you're a VE. Because if you don't like the president and you want another president, you're a VE. DVEs with ideological agendas derived from anti-government or anti-authority sentiment. First of all, sentiment is not criminal. A person is allowed to have a sentiment. They're allowed to even speak how they feel. They're just not allowed to, threaten people or do anything bad. But they can't label someone for a sentiment. That's not their job. That's not why we elected these people. However, we have learned now in 2025 that this government department, the Director of National Intelligence, that has now been replaced by Tulsi Gabbard, we know that this was bureaucracy, and we know that there was a lot of stuff going on, and that's why President Trump removed the security clearances of 51 members of this gaggle. DVEs who, with ideological agendas derived from anti-government or anti-authority sentiment, including opposition to perceived economic, social, or racial hierarchies or perceived government overreach, negligence, or illegitimacy. So anyone that questions the government, anyone that questions government in overreach, anyone that says the government's being negligent, all of a sudden you are automatically labeled a VE. I find this highly abusive and painful to even read. Okay, then they throw in this MVE, which I can't even say that word. These people they're calling militia DVE who take overt, so that means direct steps to violently resist or facilitate the overthrow of, you know what, in support of their belief that the government is purposefully exceeding its constitutional authority and is trying to establish a totalitarian regime. Well, it's kind of looking like that's what they're trying to do. U.S. government is purposefully exceeding its constitutional authority and is trying to establish a totalitarian regime. That's what we're supposed to do as voters. That's our right. That's why we have the Constitution. That's why we have the Second Amendment, is that we are able, so that we're able to protect ourselves against government overreach if it ever came to that. That's the whole reason the Constitution is in place. But they're saying now you're going to be labeled trying to establish blah, 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 opposing many federal and state laws and regulations. So if you oppose a law, if you oppose a regulation, you might be called an MDVE because they love labeling you. And let me promise you, you can sit here and look and say, okay, well, I disagree with that person, so I don't really care if they're called a DVE or not. Or you might join in the crowd and be angry with the DVE or with whomever they're calling a DVE. However, there may come a day where you could become labeled. So look out, because you don't want anyone labeled in this way. It's inhumane. Anarchist VEs. DVEs who oppose all forms of capitalism, corporate globalism, and governing institutions which are perceived as harmful to society. So if you oppose globalization, governing institutions, and you think that they are harmful to society, then you're automatically put in this category, according to D&I. So you're going to get a SAR. You're going to get a demerit. You're going to get a write-up for having views that are not in line with this particular government. And what does that mean? I can only imagine. This is the Director of National Intelligence Report. It's unclassified. What does that mean? They have all of our surveillance information. Does that mean that we get, if we have a demerit, what does this mean? Like, why are they labeling like this? Does this mean if you're a good little girl or boy, or if you're a good, citizen that never talks back, that doesn't question anything, that agrees with the powers that be at the time, that you're not going to be what? What are they using this data to achieve? Sovereign citizens VEs. They don't like those sovereign citizens. DVEs who believe they are immune from government authority and laws. Okay, then we've got the last category. All other DTTs. DVEs with ideological agendas that are not otherwise defined under one of the domestic T threat categories, including a combination of personal grievances and beliefs with potential bias related to religion, gender, or sexual orientation. So now you're not called a DVE, you're called, no. DVEs, this is crazy. DVEs with ideological agendas that are not otherwise defined under one of the other domestic T categories, including a combination of personal grievances and beliefs with potential bias related to religion, gender, or sexual orientation. So if you have beliefs, you're in the DVE. This is problematic, y'all. So problematic. This is from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence for the United States of America. And they're saying DVE poses heightened T in 2021. And you got to understand, at the time, we had our President Biden standing up, calling Trump supporters DTs. We had the media smearing people, calling them extremists. You had all sorts of false accusations going on all over. So we have to remember the context in which this document was provided to the government. Executive summary. The IC assesses that DVE, who are motivated by a range of ideologies and galvanized by recent political and societal events in the United States, pose an elevated threat to the homeland in 2021. Enduring DVE motivations pertaining to biases concerning minority populations and perceived government overreach will almost certainly continue to drive DVE radicalization and mobilization to violence. Wow, really? Newer socio-political developments, such as narratives of fraud in the recent general election, the emboldening impact of the breach of the Capitol, conditions related to COVID, and conspiracy theories promoting V will almost certainly spur some DVEs to try to engage in V this year. Nothing could be further from the truth. We were too busy being thrown in prison. Okay? The IC assesses that lone offenders or small cells of DVEs adhering to a diverse set of VE ideologies are more likely to carry out V attacks in the homeland than organizations that allegedly advocate a DVE ideology. So now they're singling out individuals and smaller groups rather than large groups. I wonder how they got that intelligence. DVE attackers, so they're calling them attackers, often radicalize independently by consuming VE material online and mobilize without direction from a VE organization, making detection and disruption difficult. The IC assesses, and so these rules and regulations are going to be spewed into society. And these regulations, banks and institutions are going to be required to integrate these regulations in order to maintain profitability. So they're going to be forced to create SARS reports on people who exhibit, or if you go look at my last video, exhibit, or even if you don't even have to suspect they exhibit it. You can just give them a SARS. And we're going to be talking about that more, but I'm just talking about this DVE today. The IC assesses that lone offenders or small cell of DVE adhering to a diverse set of VE ideologies. Okay, we got that. The IC assesses that racially or ethnically motivated VEs. So this is like really causing the color war, really trying to promote division among racial tensions. It just so hurts. And militia violent E's present the most ill DVE threats. That's just not even true. That's not statistically true. I don't see any evidence provided. I just see someone talking out their butt. Nobody's providing evidence. All they're using as evidence is bullcrap. You know, they're alluding to evidence, but they're not providing evidence in this official report. It's just insane. Oh my gosh. With RMVEs most likely to conduct MC attacks against civilians. Since when? Since when? That's not been the case. And not to mention, when I say that's not been the case, first of all, we're not like that. We don't have that problem. They're cooking up a problem that doesn't exist, A. And B, they cook up their own problems and then they create solutions for society to fix it. The IC assesses that the MVE threat increased last year and that it will almost certainly continue to be elevated through 2021 because of contentious sociopolitical factors that motivate MVEs to commit V. So that never happened. All they did was come and arrest everyone in 2021 and terrorize everyone by raiding their homes, taking their things, surveilling them. At the very time when this report was out, my home was being surveilled with a black van. So this is why, is because they were trying to label me as something that I was not. The IC assesses whether that the MVE threat, and this just sounds so horrible that anybody would speak like this, much less that you would actually be categorized in this way. It's so offensive to even read. It's so sad. It's so sick. It's so un-American. It's so anti-human. It's so tyrannical. And it's so bad. It feels bad. The IC assesses that the U.S. RMVEs who promote the superiority of the white race, that's crazy. We don't. And so also during this exact same time, y'all, I was being bombarded with thousands of phone calls making fun of me because of my white race and calling me names because of my race. And I was just so confused. I was like, I was getting emails. I was getting texts. I was getting phone calls. I was getting tweets. I was getting comments everywhere. Articles about the color of my skin. And then here, it looks like they're accusing people that are DVEs, dissenting against the government, saying that they might even promote the superiority of the white race. Like, I can't even fathom that. Like, anybody that would do that would be totally offensive. That's not a common theme in society, but they're trying to make it be a common theme, or they're trying to use that theme in order to manipulate society through propaganda, through cancel culture, into thinking that we have these issues that we do not have, because it serves the goal of their power. I think it's called Marxism, with most persistent and concerning transnational connections, because individuals with similar ideological beliefs exist outside of the United States, and these RMVEs frequently communicate with and seek to influence each other. Well, first of all, I feel like they're talking about me, but they're blaming me personally, and you probably, if you're listening to this, they're blaming citizens for being something that they're not. This is gaslighting. This is trying to make someone guilty of something that they're not guilty of. And then saying they seek to influence each other. We don't have this problem in the United States. These people who are writing this are the problem. We assess that a small number of U.S. RMVEs have traveled abroad to network with like-minded individuals. Well, that wasn't bolded. It looks like this was written by AI, because AI is something that would do a lot of bold like this. The IC assesses that DVEs exploit a variety of popular social media platforms, smaller websites with targeted audiences, and encrypted chat applications to recruit new adherents. Well, during the time that this persecution was taking place in March 2021, we had no other alternative to communicate, because Twitter was censored, completely censored. Anything we would say would be throw us in jail or get us kicked off. Exploit a variety of social media platforms, smaller websites with targeted audiences, and encrypted chat applications to recruit new adherents, plan and rally support for in-person actions, and disseminate materials that contribute to radicalization and mobilization to V, which is not true. Not true. Maybe they were, expecting that. Ugh. But it's like they have to put this person down in order to justify their persecution. So they have to take a U.S. citizen and label them and accuse them of behaviors and thoughts and sentiment that they may or may not have, and then label them in a way that they are not, that is associated with negativity, in order to silence and cancel them. They have to do all of these things in order to accomplish the goal of alienating the public, the masses, from people who have dissenting viewpoints. It's very important that they do this mental gymnastics and manipulation in order to control the other people, in order to maintain control. The IC assesses that several factors could increase the likelihood of DVE attacks. So that's like accusing people who have dissenting viewpoints of horrible things and beyond, including escalating support from persons in the U.S. or abroad, growing perceptions of government overreach related to legal or policy changes and disruptions, and high-profile attacks, spurning follow-on attacks, and innovations in targeting and attack tactics. So they want to shut it all down. That's why they came in and started arresting people as quickly as possible and giving people these trumped-up charges for protesting, because they were justifying it by saying these things. DVE lone offenders will continue to pose significant detection and disruption challenges because of their capacity for independent radicalization to V, which the word V is not the word V as we know it. That's what I just discovered. The word V in their context is dissent, because dissent to a totalitarian government can disrupt the power. Anyone who dissents vocally is capable of dissenting. And when I say dissent, I mean saying, I don't like that. The government should do this, that, and the other. We voted for y'all to do this. That is dissent. If you have a population where dissent is free, and you're free to dissent, and you're free to express your opinions, beliefs, and desires, then it is considered violence to people who don't want you to do that. Because the only way a totalitarian government can keep control is if no one is free to speak. Freedom of speech is your number one ticket to freedom. And they're trying to say, no, you can't do that. And I've studied this in some books, that even a little dissent is so damaging. So totalitarian governments don't last long generally when they have dissent. That's how they go, and that's a military grade. That's how they go and topple organizations, is they'll bring in dissent. So it's very technical. So what they're saying is that they don't want any of that. They want to shut it down. They want to take us back, or they want us to be like North Korea, not America. DVE lone offenders will continue to pose significant detection and disruption challenges because of their capacity for independent radicalization to V, ability to mobilize discreetly, and access to Fs. And that's really scary for them, I'm sure. Second Amendment. And that's where they would have probably came in if Kamala had won. That would have been the next thing. Scope note. As part of the Office of Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, mission to lead and support intelligent community, IC, integration and deliver insights, the ODNI has leveraged IC components to provide a comprehensive intelligent assessment on DVE. This assessment was prepared under the auspices of DNI in consultation with the Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security. So Attorney General Merrick Garland, and I don't know who the Secretary of Homeland Security is right off the top of my head, and was drafted by the National Counter T Center, NCTC, Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. What do you know? The FBI. So like I said, at the very moment when this document was released, because I believe this document was written before this moment. I believe this was planned. And so it was released in March. So the FBI, the Attorney General, all of these people, the Department of Homeland Security, and contributions from the CIA and the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, the FBI, DHS, lead the IC's counter-DVE missions. Interesting. And are thus positioned to bring domestic collection to bear in understanding and addressing this issue. Domestic collection to bear, which means domestic surveillance. Domestic surveillance of anyone who was standing up in a school board, saying, I don't like the way the school board is bringing in the strippers for kids. If you did that, then you were a DVE and they needed to get information on you. Wow. The FBI and DHS lead IC's counter-DVE missions and are thus positioned to bring domestic collection to bear in understanding and addressing this issue, while the NCTC supports them. Other IC elements, such as CIA and DIA, contribute their unique accesses or expertise, including on ties that foreign elements have to DVEs. Throw that in there, just for good measure. All agencies are mindful of the duty to respect privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties, and act within the authorities granted to them as they seek to put together as complete an intelligence and analytic picture as possible. So yeah, I get this. I lived this. This was awful. Thank God for President Trump. We can't let these people ever take us over again. That was awful. If they do, then now we know what they're doing. If they ever get back in, hold of the reins, at least we have this information to know what they are doing. Okay, for the purpose of this assessment, the IC defines as DVE as an individual based and operating primarily in the United States without direction or inspiration from a foreign T group or other foreign power, and who sees to further political and social goals wholly or in part through unlawful acts of force or V. Which, I don't see any. Where's the criminal code? I mean, there's no criminal code. This is all bureaucracy. These are all unelected people. Didn't the CIA when did the Department of National Intelligence come into being? Isn't that part of the CIA and the John F. Kennedy? This assessment does not evaluate the actions of individuals engaged solely in activities protected by the First Amendment or other rights secured by the Constitution of the United States. So They're using doublespeak. They are not in line with U.S. Constitution. They are not following their own directives. They are talking in circles, using circular dialogue, and they are gaslighting, which this whole concept, this is like the conception of what they did to us in the persecution through the media. This is where it was birthed. And then we get into the part that I read first, which is, basically, if you disagree with the government, you are a DVE. So this is a direct link. This is a piece of evidence that directly links government policy from the very highest levels to calling people who opposed the political regime of the time domestic VEs. This is direct connect. So anybody that says the government never did that is wrong, because they did. And I've got proof. It's right here in this document. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Come back tomorrow.